Welcome to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hey everybody, it's time for another conversation here on the Cattleman's Call podcast. Lane Nordland with you today. We're going to be joined by one of the Environmental Stewardship Award regional winners that was announced during CattleCon 2024. Hey, I do want to give a big shout out to the ESAP sponsors, of course, the Natural Resources Conservation Service and Corteva being the key main sponsors of the event, but also support comes to ESAP from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and advocates include McDonald's, AgriWeb, RanchBot, and Ag Risk Advisors. So a big tip of the hat to all of these entities that help bring great awareness to the good work that ranchers do out in the countryside and for their continued support of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Well, we're lucky enough to be joined by Liesa and Russell Priddy today of the JB Ranch in Immokalee. I almost had it there. Immokalee, Florida. What region is that? I'm trying to blank on what region.
This is Region 2 for NCBA.
I'm from Region 5, so that's all I ever think about up there in the Northwest. But, you know, you're in your home state here this week, and you're a few hours south of us, of course, from Orlando here. But, you know, let's just talk about ranching in a state that has one of the fastest growing populations, but one of the largest cattle numbers in the nation as well, and some of the opportunities, some of the challenges. I guess first, before we get that, just what does it mean to be recognized by your peers with this ESAP regional win?
It's very exciting for us to be recognized. Of course, we don't do the work for the recognition. It's just kind of the icing on the cake. And anytime we have an opportunity to share the story of our ranch and how important ranching and the ranch lands are to the environment, we always take that opportunity.
Russell, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just super excited. It's kind of like the great big pat on the back for years and years of work that we've done, and there's been a tremendous difference in the way the ranch looks today than what it did years ago, and we just take a lot of pride in what we've done and how we've done it and how it looks today.
So is this a multi-generational ranch that you live on?
Yes, we're the third generation owners. My grandfather was the original owner of the property, and he purchased it as an ongoing ranch back in the early 1950s, so we just retained the name. And then my dad ran it, and now Russell and I are running it.
And what's it mean to be the third generation on there, continuing that work from your grandfather?
It's a big responsibility. Of course, they put a lot of work into it, pioneering Florida, because Florida is such a young state and very harsh conditions. And we saw the pride that they took in it and how much it meant to them. And it's just something that we hope that they'd be proud of if they were here to see it.
Yep.
Liesa, in particular, her heart is really into the ranch and the operation and the cattle. And, of course, she grew up there and has always thought of that as, her home, her ranch, her backyard, and for her to think that anything else could take place on there is just not a pleasant pleasant thought. Just really touching how much enthusiasm she has for keeping the ranch and keeping it a productive ranch.
What does your management style look like? What type of cattle are you running down there, and what has maybe changed over those years? Obviously, to receive this ESAP regional win is a great honor, and it shows the work that you and stakeholders and so many other people put forward. But what does that management plan look like over the years?
Well, it has changed quite a lot as the cattle industry, across the country has changed. Originally there were, what we call scrub cattle. A lot of people don't know that Florida is the first place that cattle were introduced into the country back in 1521. And a lot of those genetics actually stayed around for a long time. So over the years, and especially since we've taken over management, we spend a lot of time on bull selection because that's key to improving our cattle herd, because we produce our own replacement heifers. And also our veterinary protocols. Back in the day, there wasn't worming going on, vaccinations going on. So we're implementing all those things to try to improve the herd, which we feel pays off at the end of the day when we go to sell our calves.
I'm assuming you have obviously Brahma influence and Red Angus. I'm just throwing some out there, but what does that look like? Your cattle herd makeup?
We run primarily a Brangus herd. We probably have about 20% beef master right now, but you're right. Especially in South Florida, you pretty much have to have some sort of Brahma influence in your cattle because the conditions are so harsh. Specifically, the heat and the bugs are the two main things that the Brahma influence help us deal with.
So many people, when they think of Florida, they think of Disney World, Universal, Miami Vice. And like I said, a lot of people don't understand just what a large cow-calf state it is. But as I mentioned at the beginning, there's so many challenges that come with this. And Russell, you mentioned before we started, but you're the only ranch in your neck of the woods next to a wilderness area. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are some other ranches adjacent to us, but yes, our ranch borders the Big Cypress National Preserve and conservation easement on the property to the east. So we're kind of the last ranch down there, and next to cypress swamps, and we have cypress swamps, and the property is very diverse with having some uplands and a variety of mix of terrain. And we have rainy season every July, August, and that can force the cows to look for a place to lay down that's not in the water for a couple months of the year. So we can have some pretty harsh conditions.
How many times have you been offered a price to sell this land down there?
Well,
and if I'm getting too personal, you tell me to.
No, I think you kind of alluded to it in a previous question about the changing face of Florida. Most people don't realize that Florida does have a lot of cattle, and some of the largest cow-calf operations in the whole country are located here in Florida. And we have the pressure mostly from NGO groups and, not surprisingly, government agencies, because there's a feeling that if property can be owned by the public, that it's going to be better managed. And I think that's a fallacy. I see a lot of government lands, again, just referencing Florida, that, once they're in public ownership, the management level just isn't there. And a phrase that I've heard fairly frequently is, you don't wash a rental car. If you don't have something invested in it, some blood, sweat, and tears, it's just not the same. And you're concerned about it, 24/7. It's not like it's a job 9 to 5. And, the development pressure is also there. We happen to be in an area that doesn't allow much, if any, development. So we're restricted in what we can do. And that's led us to have to explore other opportunities as far as income production.
Yeah. Well, and it's truly so telling. so much of the state is developed so fast. Then you have the other issue where it's conserved so much, which we understand there needs to be open spaces and whatnot. But as you alluded, ranchers do a very good job of taking care of these resources.
Well, and Lisa mentioned that, our land is restricted, but we help shape that plan for the county that would leave most of our land in conservation, but similar to transfer of credits for development. So someone who's got land that can be developed, they would, in theory, purchase credits from us to do that. But we were okay with that because we didn't want to build on it anyway. So that fit right in with our long-range plan of, keeping the ranch.
And obviously, with the recognition of this regional award, you've done a lot of work in different areas, as you mentioned, to be profitable, but also to take care of that landscape as well. What has that been like the last few years, and when did that maybe click? Like, hey, we need to start doing something a little bit differently.
Well, for me, because I got involved in the day-to-day operations a few years ahead of Lisa when her dad was still alive, and he introduced me to this plant called a Brazilian pepper, which is an invasive. And, over about 7 or 8, 10 years, the ranch just kept getting overgrown.
What does that look like? I'm not familiar.
It's a bush that produces a little red berry, but it can grow 15, 20 feet tall. It can just absolutely choke out any native trees and plants, and just really has no value to us locally. So this kind of got out of hand, and by the time we realized that, hey, if we don't do something, it's going to be a problem. Well, my father-in-law wasn't real big on spending a lot of money in doing these things, and I was able to go to NRCS and get some matching funding, and it was a little bit of a challenge to talk him into accepting that money because he didn't. One of these that didn't necessarily trust government and want government in our business. But anyway, that was a godsend for us because it allowed us to very aggressively go work on this issue. The other little sweet spot we had was because most of our county is owned by the Collier family, and it's Collier County. They leased out a good bit of land for farms and ranches and what have you, but their lease was only for a year at a time to people. And we were literally just about the only people in the county that could qualify for NRCS monies. So whatever pile of money the county had, we would get the bulk of it for probably 6 or 7 years. And that really put us in the position that we're in today to get rid of the majority of that species quickly. And we're probably 95% Brazilian pepper free. And
so how many years has that been then?
Well, that's been 18, 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's still an ongoing process with maintaining and spot spraying and those things. So you're never done with it. The birds eat the seeds and they just fly wherever, and you're starting all over. So if you can't fall asleep, you got to pay attention to the management of this.
What other grazing, anything looking like that? What were some of the other opportunities that you participated in?
Well, there's another invasive that they've helped us a good bit with, NRCS had, and that's Kogan grass, which has only been in our part of the world probably 8 or 10 years now, but it is a tough grass to get rid of. And another minor invasive is Old World climbing fern, and that's not as bad, but again, it's one of those things when you first see it, you better put together a plan because you don't want to be behind in trying to eradicate that.
Can you burn rangeland down there?
Yes, we do prescribe burning. Our biggest limitation is concerns about the smoke getting in the way of causing traffic hazards.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have two fairly major roads that we're bordered by, and of course, it's a safety issue. So if we're doing that type of burning, the wind has to be just right, the moisture just has to be just right. We do pile burning also when we do mechanical removal of these invasive species. So that's a little easier to do. But it's getting harder and harder to do prescribed burning, but we do as much as we can.
Oh. And so obviously species play a role in so many producers' operations, whether it's grizzly bears in Montana, wolverines everywhere, a salamander elsewhere. You also have a species, an apex predator that you ranch with as well.
Right. It seemed like a lot of these things happen at the same time, about the same time that we saw, the invasive vegetation. And we were keeping, fairly good numbers on our cattle, again, coming off of an era of, my dad's management. And, the first couple of years that we were in charge, we noticed that our number of calves, coming to the pens for market was not at the level that it should have been based on the number of pregnant cows that we had. And of course, that was very alarming. You're trying to get to the bottom of it. Is it a health issue? What's going on? So we theorized that it was panther predation because we were seeing more panthers on our property. And of course,
and are these mountain lions to me?
Right, they're mountain lions, cougars, panthers. They're all that tawny looking color, like a deer color. And they're really the same species regardless of where they are in the country. But in Florida, they're called panthers. In theorizing what it might be, we kind of related, we're seeing more panthers and we're seeing fewer calves. Maybe there's a correlation there. But, proving that is another issue, because one of the characteristics of panthers is that they, attack their prey and then they pull it off. And then when they're through eating, there's really nothing left but the hooves. So after a year or two, we were finally able to prove to our state Fish and Wildlife Service that, yes, it was panther predation. So then, fortunately, another couple of years goes by, and with some funding from the Fish and Wildlife Service and the University of Florida, they did a 2-year study and was actually able to prove a percentage level of predation. And in our case, in the sample herd that was used, they confirmed a loss of 5%. Based on our numbers in a natural setting, without the intervention of all the research going on, we estimate that from 8 to 10% of our calf crop is lost to panther predation every year. It is an endangered species, so it's protected, and there are no management efforts that we can take. We can't even do things like, paintballs or, any other type of what's considered under the ESA harassment of that animal. And there's really no workable reimbursement program for that. So one of the outreach efforts that I've been working a lot on is a payment for ecosystem services program. If you can't help a producer on the per calf loss side, let's reward ranchers and other landowners for providing habitat for these endangered species. So we're providing really like free parkland, which we're glad to do. But it's nice to, again, be recognized financially for it.
Yeah. I assume you have hogs down there too? No, they
Well,
probably eat them all.
One of the things about Panthers is they love hogs. That's one of their favorite foods. And what I tell other Florida ranchers, as Panthers ranges go into other parts of the state, is you've got Panthers whenever your hog population starts to decline. So we haven't had hogs for over 15 years.
Yeah,
on
probably
our property.
Probably closer to 30, but
Wow.
yes.
Yeah.
They've wiped out the hog population.
Well, and that's an interesting point though too to bring up, because obviously we with wolves and grizzly bears, everything too, you can always tell when different species move out. Black bears move out of the creek bottoms when grizzlies come in, and it's just two different places, but same issues, just different categories there too. But how important has it been though, going through these processes, working with NRCS and having an agency that does, for the most part, serve producers? And that's their goal. What has that been like in trying to tell your story to your neighbors, or maybe some critics in your area that think that, well, these Panthers should just have more rights than the cattle?
Well, we've participated in probably every program that they've had available, from conservation program to equip and just a variety of practices. But one thing I was able to do after we pretty well got our Brazilian pepper problem under control, I went to the Collier families and suggested that they change their leases so that these people they were leasing to could get monies to clean up their land for free, if you would, because between the matching fund from the rancher and NRCS, the landowner wasn't going to have to pay anything, and they jumped on that. Now, that was a little self-serving for me because I wanted them to get rid of their problem so it didn't end up on me again. So, yes, these government programs, and we've also participated with the Partners program with the Panther Refuge, some matching funds for a program. So, yeah, these agency programs and the expertise from some of the folks there has been very valuable.
And if I can just kind of piggyback on that, because as Russell referenced, my dad and I think his generation, really tried to stay away from taking any assistance. They were going to do it on their own. And I can appreciate that viewpoint. But just to add a little, personal information, I guess we have a little different perspective on it now, since we did have to pay estate taxes. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a way for us to get back some of our own money that we've paid in taxes, is to, apply for some of these programs. It's like, are there people that are more deserving than we are, than our property is? And, we don't feel that there are. I mean, that's what the money's there for. So, we got over feeling that that's not something that we should take advantage of.
Well, and we frequently get asked by NGO organizations and others that if they've got one of their Washington, D.C. people coming to visit Florida, they want to show them the landscape or a ranch, and we're the ones they come to to show off what's down here. And we had the opportunity probably about 5 years ago to host the undersecretary for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to showcase some of the utilization of the funds. And she was just amazed because she had, she knew the terminology but had never seen things put into practice. So, and then she went on as a keynote speaker at a gathering in Naples, and really gave us a pat on the back what a good job we had done, and I think that shocked about half the people in the room because they were mostly of the mindset that ranchers are bad people.
How do you think this recognition will help bring positive light to not only your ranch, but ranching in Florida as a whole?
Well, I think anytime that there's an opportunity to promote ranching, we should take advantage of it. And again, to tell our story. Unfortunately, I don't know that ranchers have always done the best job of telling their stories because in general, I think we're very private people. We like to just go to work, get the job done without making a lot of hoopla about what we're doing. And I think we're having to change that mindset. We're kind of suffering for not being better promoters of ourselves and what we're doing. So that's why we've kind of bit the bullet, so to speak, and are open to accepting opportunities to be on panels, to participate in groups, do tours, just whatever we can to try to spread the message. I feel like that's part of our responsibility, as ranchers.
And I think from some of the people we've had on tours from the urban area, they just really don't understand what all we are providing with ranching. They're amazed at the abundance of wildlife that we have. We had one guy from Audubon, and he counted, I think, 60 different species of birds. I'm not a big bird person, so I don't ever pay attention to such things. But he was just overwhelmed, and to have an abundance of just across the board, all the other wildlife. And I think from some of the studies done, I think we've got at least 20 endangered species on the property that we're, providing habitat for, and apparently some pretty good habitat for, that many to use it. So, we just need to do a better job at tooting our own horn and telling our story and pointing out, I think, some of the things that are going on the ranch that people just don't think of.
May I ask, what's the future look like for the JB Ranch?
Well, it seems like it changes all the time because we don't have any control over development in our area, and especially since COVID, people are flocking to Florida. I think they're saying there's
over 1,000 a day.
And I don't know what's going to stop that. Even with prices going up exponentially for housing and living, it hasn't seemed to slow down. So I think that we're going to have to constantly be monitoring that and seeing how that's going to be affecting us, because we see development getting closer and closer and closer to us. And I'm sure we're going to be getting feelers put out as far as are you interested in doing something else with your property?
Yeah, and the other thing, even though our property may not have homes built on it because of the regulations that we have in place, just having the volume of people using the road out front impacts our operation.
When I was a little girl, I remember moving cows down the highway. It was not that big of a deal. You didn't have to call the local authorities or the sheriff's department. And today, if you called up to get permission, they'd probably laugh you out of the room. It's just not something that you could ever do because the volume of traffic has just increased so greatly.
Do you foresee any family or friends wanting to continue the ranching legacy in that region?
I think there's always going to be an interest in keeping JB Ranch as an ongoing concern. I think there is a realization of the economic and environmental benefits. And that's why I think, the payment for ecosystem services, I just, you can't hang your hat on one thing. But if I were to guess, I think that's really going to be a key going forward across the country for ranchers, to help compensate them, because, if you're trying to make a living off of raising cows only, you're going to have some very lean years. You've got good years and bad years, like in all types of agriculture, but there really is a need for diversification.
So are you going to carry the bronze around here at the trade show today?
I'd love to.
We'll get a little cart for you.
If I could put it like on a chain around my neck, instead of like a big gold necklace, I'd have like a big bronze.
What is? I know you got a busy day here, and I want to help you save your voices a little bit because you're going to be doing a bunch of interviews with media here in just a little while. But what's a message you have to cattle producers that are tuning into this about just the importance of sharing your story, of not just providing food for the world and for the nation, but providing a habitat for your livestock and for other species to thrive in?
Well, I guess I really would have two messages. If I were speaking to the public, I would say, do your homework whenever you're hearing things about agriculture, to make sure that you're getting the accurate information. You just can't trust everything you read. And in speaking to other producers, I would say, I know it's not comfortable and it's not going to be your favorite thing to do, but you've got to be able to speak on behalf of your industry if it's something that you want to see as a viable way of life for future generations.
Yeah, and I think as hard as it is for us sometimes to spend the time to bring strangers in and give tours and what have you, I think the picture's more valuable than the speech. What they see is more impactful than whatever it is we may be trying to tell them. Because if they see the deer running or the turkeys around, and occasionally they're going to see a black bear and just all the other wildlife and birds, I think that goes a lot longer in telling our story than us sitting in a room and Lisa does a lot of sitting on panels and is asked to give talks about various things a lot, and I just think the visual is very important too. So,
well, again, congratulations on your Region II ESAP 2023 award, and good luck here in a few months there in Washington, D.C. during the legislative conference for NCBA when the national winner will be announced.
Great, thank you.
We're very excited, and thank you.
Well, again, friends, for more on the Environmental Stewardship Award and what it provides producers and consumers, lawmakers, decision makers, you can visit ncba.org and watch some outstanding videos that feature not only the Priddy family, but all the regional winners and past winners as well. Just a big shout out once again to the ESAP sponsors, NRCS, Corteva, supporters, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and along with the advocate level to McDonald's, AgriWeb, RanchBot, and AgRisk Advisors for all of their continued support of the ESAP Award. Again, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Our pleasure.
Well, friends, that will do it for this Cattleman's Call. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.